Kendrick Johnson was murdered at his high school in Valdosta, Georgia. This 17-year-old physically fit athlete was found rolled up in a gym mat. He had all types of physical trauma performed on his body. The story that we were expected to swallow was that somehow one of his sneakers went through an opening in the center of a rolled up mat, and that opening was large enough for Kendrick Johnson supposedly to try to get up on top of the mat and try to climb down inside of the mat in order to get his sneaker. It was funny that his sneakers, both of them, were found above his body. Not one sneaker, both sneakers. And he supposedly had died from asphyxiation. Now, that stretches all credulity as far as a reason for this boy to do what he supposedly did. It would have made more sense if his sneaker was at the bottom of this mat. Simply to tip the mat over, the sneaker should have been either on the floor or at the far end of the mat, and he should have been able to reach in with one arm and grab it. That's just common sense. Okay, but when an autopsy was performed and issued the bullshit findings, the family went to get their own autopsy. They were not able to get possession of his body for a long period of time. And when they did, his organs were all missing. There is a lot of back and forth about that one. Another problem with this was there was videotape in the gym, but magically that videotape disappeared, and all kinds of excuses were made as far as that was concerned. It didn't strike anybody as odd that there was the son of a member of the FBI that was inside that gym. That's documented. And there was also the son or a relative, I believe it was the son of the police chief inside that gym. That's also documented. But for some reason, the Department of Justice couldn't see their way clear in their investigation to find anything out of the ordinary. So that when the parents made their attempt at getting to the truth, they had little help. Now, the parents had initially filed a civil lawsuit, which they retracted in order to allow the Department of Justice to perform their investigation. And this is the aftermath of them withdrawing that suit while the Justice Department came up with their, I'm going to call them bullshit findings. The Justice Department has a history of not being able to come up with any reasons to pursue lawsuits in a lot of cases. The only ones that they appear to actually have any stomach for are cases where things are so cut and dry that a blind man could see the merits of their arguments. Here we go with an example of the now judicial system attacking the family of this young man.
Tom, Kendrick Johnson, we've covered this story. Young black man, January 11th, 2013. His body was found in a rolled up mat. Autopsy was done. They say accidental death. There were bruises on his body. The family has been demanding answers. The family then filed various lawsuits against different people. Now, all of a sudden, Tom, a judge has ruled that that family must pay the legal fees of individuals who they sued. Joining us right now, Mr. and Mrs. Kendrick Johnson. Folks, good morning. Welcome to the Tom Joyner Morning Show on TV1. How are you?
Good morning.
Your reaction to the judge's decision last week that you must pay the legal fees of individuals who you sued and then later dropped those lawsuits.
It's just another slap in the face. It's like we're having to pay for my son being murdered.
First of all, how many lawsuits were filed? And you dropped those lawsuits. They're saying you have to now pay those legal fees. So how many suits are we talking about? And have they calculated how much money the judge is ordering you to repay?
It's been a couple of lawsuits, and so far we've heard $900,000 back pay.
$900,000?
Yes.
Why did you drop the lawsuit?
Well, it was in a situation where they were trying to push the civil suit before the criminal suit was taking place. So we decided to drop it in order to pick it back up within those 6 months.
Now, when you say drop it, so here's what happened here. The U.S. Attorney's Office took over the investigation from Valdosta, Georgia, from the officials there. The U.S. Attorney's Office eventually concluded that they were not going to file charges against anyone. That was the criminal part. The wrongful death lawsuits that you and your lawyers filed, that was on the civil side. So are you saying those civil lawsuits were dropped?
Yes, the civil lawsuits were dropped.
Is it your plan to refile those lawsuits?
Yes, they will be refiled.
So what's then going to happen to these attorney's fees? Could you and your family potentially be on the hook for even more attorney's fees if you proceed forward with these lawsuits?
I'm not sure at this point, but maybe we could, but we are going to proceed forward. We're not going to be distracted by what they're trying to do to make us be silent. We will not let them silence us about our son's murder. Nothing they can do. Nothing
And
they
how do
can do. Go ahead.
How do they explain the murder of your son? Why was he in that mat?
Oh, well, they keep saying it was an accident. He fell into the mat, stayed there, got stuck and died. But me being his mom, I know that my son wouldn't even try to crawl into no mat. And then the Justice Department even came out and told us in the meeting what we had with them that KJ's shoe was placed under his head, the shoe that he was supposedly reaching for.
Tom, also, we were talking about a young man who was an athlete, very fit, and the logic, and this is, Mrs. Johnson, I'm trying to understand, the logic that there was a shoe in a mat, he simply had the strength to just push over the mat to get the shoe.
Yeah, unroll the mat.
As opposed to crawl down in a mat.
Right.
Makes no sense.
But it makes sense to somebody, and those somebodies are the ones that are in charge of making these decisions.
Yeah.
Mrs. Johnson, do you believe that these slapping you with these legal fees is an attempt to get you and your husband and your attorneys to stop to stop pursuing justice in this case?
Yes, it is.
Do you all have a legal fund?
Yes, we setting up one. We have a GoFundMe that's set up. Someone has just set up for us to try to raise those legal fees.
This is certainly a stunning case, Tom. And again, we know from other states that the threat of having to pay the legal fees of anyone you sue is keeping other people from pursuing justice in similar cases. And that seems to be exactly what's going on right here.
Yes, but I mean, as I say again, there's nothing they can do to stop us from pursuing this case. We're going to take this case all the way through. No matter how many distractions they throw at us or whatever they try to throw at us, we're going to keep pushing. We're going to find out exactly what happened to Kendrick Johnson, who killed Kendrick Johnson.
Roland, as we leave, could you recap what happened to Kendrick Johnson?
January 11th, 2013, Kendrick Johnson was in a gymnasium at Lowndes High School in Valdosta, Georgia, when they say that somehow his tennis shoe fell down a rolled-up mat, a large rolled-up mat, and they claim that Kendrick then climbed on top of the mat, crawled down into the mat to get his shoe. He got stuck, and therefore he suffocated. Autopsy was done. There was bruising on his body. It was ruled accidental, but then the county sheriff's office and the school were not necessarily trying to work with the family. What ended up happening, Tom, in this particular case, there was a missing piece of the video. All of a sudden, there are cameras all around the school. It captured Kendrick right before the mat incident, but somehow the video of him in the gymnasium crawling into the mat is no longer there. And the attorneys were jamming them up saying, what's going on with the missing video? And so that's also one of the huge questions in this case as well.
Were there anybody else in the gym?
Yes, there were other students in the gym, and those individuals have been investigated, including the sons of an FBI agent.
And isn't one of the boys also connected to the sheriff?
Yes, as well. All of that was investigated by the U.S. Attorney's Office. They concluded that they could not ascertain, and they said that no one was involved, no charges were filed, and they have gone with the accidental death of Kendrick Johnson.
And the hearing regarding the fees has been canceled, and so we don't know if there's going to be a rescheduling or where this goes from here. Right.
So we'll be following this to see what happens next.
And there is a GoFundMe page, correct?
Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll get those details, Mrs. Johnson, provide them on blackamericaweb.com and news1.com.
All right. All right, Roland.
Mrs. Johnson, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
That's so sad.
Yeah, see, this is a blatant attempt by the powers that be down there in Valdosta, Georgia, in order to get these people to stop trying to get to the bottom of who killed their son. And in my mind, it's ridiculous that they are being asked to pay legal fees, especially if they initially had dropped the lawsuits, the civil lawsuits, allowing the Justice Department to come in and do their investigation. I hope that these people can get their civil lawsuits back up to speed as soon as possible and hopefully get justice for their son. But again, this is a blatant attempt by the judicial system to try to use all of its weight and power in order to blunt the attempt at obtaining justice.